Hello and welcome. This is Claudia Sky, and today's video is on the power of ancestral healing. Ancestral healing is so powerful because all of us carry several patterns from our ancestry, from our lineage in us that we live out and can or cannot bring to resolution, to wholeness, to love. Science knows now, and I've heard that from several scientific communities where they have seen how and where these patterns, they are sort of wrapped around the DNA and perhaps also inside of the DNA, how they are passed on and how they're absolutely real. And mystics and shamans, of course, have known this for eons and worked with that. And the power of this and the reason that it's important to understand about, or to understand that, is that these patterns thwart our true selves. They impede us. They're heavy. We will at some point in our life be faced with them, and the less we get into our heads about it and wonder why this is going on, because of course it wouldn't make any logical sense to our mind, and so the mind resists and doesn't want to deal with it, most likely. The more we get out of the way and we perhaps see that this doesn't have to originate with us. Maybe it is something we carry from somebody, from a great-grandfather at the time of a war, some predicament in ourselves that we know plays out as a struggle in a certain area in our health, in relationships, in finances, where we show up a certain way, where we know we are more than that, but we have such a hard time showing up for ourselves. We have these patterns that take our power away, and we kind of lose our strength there. And so we just need to know, like, okay, here's something I'm struggling with. Help me. How can I shift this? Is then my question. Asking myself on life. There are modalities that exist already. Family constellation is one of those, where you present your pattern that you see is repeating and painful to the facilitator, who either has people, a group of people live or online these days, or works with objects that then take on the character and energy of certain ancestors that are called in, or certain patterns that are obvious that can be called in, and then that person or object sort of acts that out. I know that sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's actually pretty powerful. I've witnessed quite a few of those, and done a couple myself. There's also shamanic healing, and really skilled and wise practitioners will understand how to work with your lineage. And so that's another path where you can take. I knew of all of that, and in some way I probably worked on that in my own life as a shamanic practitioner for a number of years. But when I realized that I was dealing with things that were shown, and that I just kind of knew they weren't mine, it didn't make sense to my mind. I just asked life. This is how I deal with everything these days. I just asked, show me a way to go through this. Show me a way to bring this to completion. And what happened for me was very somatic, because I began to feel, just like in somatic trauma work, the pattern rise up as energy, as a sensation. And I would then actually begin to see it also as light, where light would turn on what happened in my light body. And I can feel and watch this pattern disappear out of my system, and then the sensation was gone. I was completely neutral to it, and it shifted in my life. And I call that process inner alchemy. And then I began to test that on clients, of course, that I work with, and I saw the same exact trajectory of what happened when they just accepted this was going on and wanted to shift the experience. So I find that really hopeful, that these patterns that we can actually resolve for our whole lineage in both directions. It takes one person to stand in that fire and to allow the pattern to burn itself up by our unconditional presence and acceptance. Not being in judgment and in the mind, but so present with this in ourselves, and just asking for resolution, for forgiveness, for healing, so that we can return to the place that you can call peace or Eden or any of that, but you can come to this place of wholeness by just facing and feeling through all these patterns, because in the feeling is the healing. So that's sort of a summary of what I want to share, and what's so powerful about it, not to forget that, is that we don't just inherit these sort of heavy toxic patterns that are life lessons. We inherit all the gifts and all the beauty and the capacities and the skills and understandings, the wisdom from our lineage as well. And that is often coupled with the shadow. And so once we do this sort of shadow work for our lineage, we now open ourselves up to these gifts that are held in the lineage as well. And of course, we are born with many, but there's so much more to uncover that we don't even know is available to us. And you know this is real when you suddenly have an experience around that, when you just see and feel and understand, and then you see it really being shown up, it shows up in your life. That's when you know it's worth looking into this, because at first it's a concept that might not at all make sense or be interesting. But when you have an experience of this kind, that's it. That quiets the mind forever, and you just become very curious about, I wonder what else is there. I wonder what else is inside of me that I don't even know, I haven't even touched. What capabilities do I have? How much can I feel that I am and accept about myself? How much more beautiful will it become as I have the courage and more the mastery, because I have the skill set and the understanding to truly come home by transcending everything that's shown as a something unwanted, and go through that threshold, leave the ego behind, and arrive in a place in our own being that can more be called our divinity, our truth, our authenticity, our sovereignty, the true being that is in here, which is always going to be a surprise perhaps, and oddly familiar at the same time, but always very beautiful.